Amazing. So, give me an update. Just give me an update about like, how it's been since the last time we spoke. Because I think the last time we spoke, we talked about going through like the process when it comes to sketching your logos.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So what's that been like?
Okay, so that took some time a little bit because I was
Mm,
trying to get like creative without my logos looking so like repetitive, like too much of the
sure,
same thing. I wanted to get
sure.
like different things. But when we look at my logos, you'll see that a lot of them probably have like similar elements. But I was
Mm,
able to like, because I'm kind of a simple person. I don't like too much going on.
mm,
So, that's what I tried to do with some of these designs here. So I have like, I think I sent around like 15, 10, I don't know. But yeah, that process, it was cool. It wasn't too challenging.
good stuff. Awesome. And great job on doing that. How many roughly did you manage to do? I'm not judging, by the way. Just
It's okay. Let me
I'm
actually
just looking.
count them. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,
No,
20.
just about, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Looks roughly about 20 there, which is a great
yeah,
start. Absolutely great start. And again, there's no like specific amounts of ideas you need to do, but just as much as possible. And I would say like I'll just encourage you to do even more like on your next projects, just like if don't stop at 20 if you feel
yeah.
like there's still a bit more left within you in you, or you can take a
Mhm.
break and then come back later. And because sometimes I go to the computer phase, which we're going to do now, but I'll go to the computer and then I'm like, I thought something else, and I'll go back to my sketchbook and I'll start
Yeah.
doodling some more stuff. So there's no rule saying, oh, once you're done with this stage you can't come back to it. So if you think of anything else that just jot it down on your sketchbook. um
Okay.
and that'll be absolutely fine. But 20 is great to work with. So
Okay.
what I'm going to do, we're going to have a look at these, and we're just going to have a chat through them, and you can see, so that we can see where your mind was at in regards to all of that. So let's have a look. So all right, so talk me through the logos on this page then.
Okay. So the first one, I wasn't really a fan because then
Mm.
the C that I made kind of reminded
Mm.
me of pizza. And
It
obviously
reminds me
that's
of
not,
Pac-Man.
yeah, exactly. And like that wasn't really the
Mm.
goal. So I just stopped completely
Mm.
with that. So then
Mm-hmm.
from there on, what I did was I researched like African patterns or like
Mm.
symbols. And I noticed they have like a lot of triangles, circles, and stuff like that. So that's what I did with like the second and third one.
Mm.
They're the same. The second and third one are the same in terms of like the symbol, but I tried to
Mm.
move around like the name of the brand, the business, to see like which one worked.
Yeah.
And then the one next to it, which has like the triangles, I did up up facing
Mm.
triangles and then downward
Mm.
triangles, try to see how
Yeah.
that works.
Mm.
This one, the biggest one, is probably the most random one of them all. I just wanted to do something like completely like
Sure.
different. So I searched up like a cool like font and tried to like emulate that
Mm.
with like a swirl. That kind of gave me
Yeah.
like a 70s vibe, like a
Mm.
groovy type vibe, which is not really what
Yeah.
I'm going for, but it was just something like different.
Yeah.
On the bottom right, so I did like the circles once again, like the African patterns type things, and
Mm.
one is just like the regular three circles, and I did circles in circles just to give
Mm.
that icon. And then the last one at the bottom left, um so I just played around with the O with like little O's and made a big
Mm.
O type of
Yeah.
thing. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. 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 Great start. And we're going to look at the you got some cool ideas there. Although what I do like is that you're showing yourself what you don't like. You see what I mean? So the first one, I like the idea that you were trying to create something with the C, but in this in this kind of case, it didn't really work for you, and that's actually good. And that's the kind of thing you want to come across. Like, okay, this thing's not quite working. Let's move on to the next thing. Okay, so what about this page? What was you thinking behind these?
Okay, so for these ones, same thing, kind of like the symbol type stuff. I just started getting like really random. So like the triangle is part of
Mm,
like the pattern thing, but I did like the bite in it for like
mm,
the chops part kind of
sure.
thing. So that's where I was going with that one. So I tried it on the
Great.
right and the left. The one underneath that, so that is a horrible illustration, but what I was going for was this like this pattern that I saw. It was like a clothing
Mm,
pattern. And it had like the circles and it had zigzags on it too. So I tried to work with that while putting the name in the middle of it. So it would be like
mm,
the name would be encompassed inside the circle, and in the
yeah.
circle would be like a pattern like with it.
Mm,
Um, then underneath that, those two are just shapes again. The geometric shapes is really what I'm looking for when I think
mm,
of like the African type vibe and stuff. There's a lot of like
mm,
geometric shapes, a lot of patterns. So I did it once with it directly on top and then kind of like curving with the name.
mm,
So to see which one works better. I actually like the curve with the name better than directly on
mm.
top.
Sure.
Um, and then moving on downward to the left. So I just played around with the A and the O
Mm,
in the middle to give it like a little design. I wasn't sure
mm,
if that kind of worked because I felt like maybe that would more focus on the A and the O. And it's like, that's not the point of
mm.
this. So I didn't know if that took
Yeah, okay.
away or if it made it like, I don't know, if it made it stand out.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
the next
That's
one is
good.
kind of
Good observation. Okay.
yeah, the next one is kind of similar to one on the first page with like the loops, the swirls. So nothing
Yeah.
fancy there.
Mm.
Now this one on the bottom left, if you can see my eraser marks, you can see how many things I tried to do with that. I tried to do with like the swirl thing, but it just wasn't working. Like I was trying to
Yeah.
like, like you see like steam coming out of a pot, so it has like smoke. I was trying to do that, but it was like,
Hmm.
nah, I didn't like that. Then I just finally ended up with one little squiggle with like circles on it, and then the words would be kind of like curved a
Mm.
little bit.
Yeah.
Um, and then the last two are pretty much the same thing, one upright, one down. This again, the
Hmm.
pattern, the geometric shapes kind of things going there. So yeah.
Great. No, I like this. You've showed a lot of variety in this. And your way of thinking, like you're really thinking beyond like, oh, does this look nice? But you're thinking about, does this send the right message? And that's what's the most important thing. So for some things you might look at it and think, oh, this isn't actually quite working. But before I go into that, out of all the ones that you've done, which two or three do you think stand out the most for you?
Um, I think I would say on the first page, the tiny triangle one, like the three triangle one.
Okay, one of
Yeah,
these ones. Okay.
that. And then the second or third one,
The second and third one. So
the
this one?
two arrows, yeah, point,
Yeah.
yeah, something like that. And then on the second page,
Mm-hmm.
I would say the curve, the three rectangle on the side,
Mm-hmm.
curve one.
With
Yeah,
small chops. Okay, cool.
yeah.
Cool. You've chosen some very strong ones. I think I understand why you've done that. Um and I would agree that they're actually probably your strongest ones. There's some that stood out a bit more for me. That's not necessarily more, but they were interesting. And the one that actually was quite interesting to me was actually this one, where it's in the circle. Um, and the reason I said that is it reminds me a lot of like fast foods logos where they're like sometimes they're in like a shape and they have like patterns around it. Or if you look at Burger King, for example, it's quite a recognizable shape. So I feel like there's some room to play with there, especially if you chuck the patterns in there. And the patterns, the fun thing about this project is that you're going to be able to create some awesome graphic elements from it. So you're going to have a lot more room to play with there. There were some observations, and I'm glad you didn't choose these ones. Not that they're bad, but
No, it's
but
okay. Be
they
totally
might have been
honest.
they're not bad. None of this is bad. They just wouldn't have been right for this, or they sent the wrong message. So, for example, these ones at the top, they remind me more of Doritos with the biting. I don't know what you're trying to do there, but the
Yeah,
risk of doing it like this, I think you would have had to play around a lot more with that pattern
yeah.
to make sure it doesn't look like a Dorito. Um, And one thing that you should be very careful with these ones, it looks like the radioactive sign.
Wow, you
Yeah,
know, I'm just now seeing it now.
yeah, yeah. So be careful with this one. But I'm very interested in seeing how this actually develops for it not to look like a radioactive sign. Um, so I would play around with that. Like if you were going to do that, you could probably, depending on how you do the triangles or the shapes,
Yeah.
yeah, like what you were trying to do here, I understand that. I think that's actually
Mhm.
quite a good idea, actually. Um,
Okay.
just getting the right balance, I guess. I think that's just really the main thing. But if they were like using the African shapes as a to enhance the name, it's a very, very good direction to go in. I think you're thinking very, very good in that way of things. But that's great. That's great. I love it. That's great. It's a great start. I'm really looking forward to seeing you to seeing what you come up with from this. Um, so let's say we choose the ones that you have chosen, which are um either this one or that one, or that idea, this idea, and this idea.
Yeah.
I would maybe this idea as well, just see what you can do with that one,
Okay.
see
Yeah.
where it goes.
Okay.
Because that could be very interesting.
Mhm.
And if it doesn't work, you can throw it away in the bin. It's fine. Okay. So awesome. Is there anything that any issues you came across while trying to do that part of the project?
One thing I would say is I wasn't sure if like the the icon element or like the graphic element needed to make sense. Like,
Mm,
because I know there are some like logos where like you'll see like let me see, for example, is it here? So like this Starbucks cup, if you can see it,
sure.
I don't know what this has to do with
Okay.
like a drink or anything. So I'm saying like
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if like the actual like emblem or whatever had to connect with the name.
I
So
think it depends on like that's a very good question. I think for the most part, yes, it should. But if you look at the Starbucks one, I think is based on the Greek goddess. So I think the elements on it are kind of reminiscent of that kind of culture. I'm not sure if it was Greek or Roman or something, but it's one of those like mermaid kind of mythology kind
yeah.
of stuff. So the patterns on there are reminiscent of it.
Okay.
So I would say if you're going to put those kind of elements on, they can't be random. They shouldn't be random. They should remind you of what's that, either that culture or what those values of that company are really.
Got you.
Yeah.
Got you.
Great. Awesome. Cool. So let's move on to the next stage. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna show you um something what I've something I made earlier, basically, from a previous project of mine. Um, so this is a project that I had to rebrand a company, and it was a fun project. But this was their old logo right here, and they wanted to basically evolve the logo, and so I did that whole brand discovery thing and all that kind of stuff with them, got their values and everything. And these, when I did the sketches, I actually chose one concept actually to develop, and this was all the concepts I did. This was actually me being generous because a lot of the time I'll do a lot more than this. But I basically took that concept, the triangle and the circle, based on that, and just kind of evolved it and simplified it and did so many versions of the same thing to try and see where I could come up with. So if you look at the left here, these are all the versions I threw away. So what you would do is that you would do what software would you normally use first off to do your logos?
For logos, I use Illustrator, Adobe
Okay,
Illustrator. Yeah.
great, awesome. Because I asked that because a lot of people still use Photoshop to do
Oh
logos.
no, no, no.
It's not inherently wrong. It just makes your job harder if you use the wrong like different
Mhm.
tools. Illustrator is pretty much a standard. People are moving on to Figma as well, but I prefer to use Illustrator. So I will take these things and just do loads of different shapes, loads of different versions, take what I like and keep it. And I just did different versions, literally just digitizing everything. And once I'm done and I'm like, okay, which of these do I want to take forward? Okay, it was that one. You can see how I just kind of refined it to that. And then I actually tried with versions. I tried 3 different versions actually. So when I was going to the clients, when I refined it, I gave them 3 different versions, which was this, and this. Normally, sometimes I would actually just send them 2 versions that are quite different. But max 3. And then they would choose the one that they want. Oh, I actually did this one as well. I still sent them 3. See, I forget I actually did this version too, but I still sent them 3 because I was looking at everything here and I was like, which one should I send them? So I sent them this one, and this one. And then I took this one and developed it into that, if you see what I mean. So it's just basically getting your ideas onto the screen. And what you're going to realize is that your idea is actually going to change shape when you put it onto Illustrator. And you'll realize that sometimes when you draw something on your sketchbook, it looks good because you've drawn it freehand. But when you do it on the screen, it feels different. It feels less natural. It feels a lot, and then it's just like, this is probably not working in digital form. So what you're going to need to do is actually do that on Illustrator and take your ideas. And I'm just going to do something real quick to one of your ideas that maybe you've probably thrown away, and see how I would normally do it. So this kind of thing, your logo, what I would advise you with your logo is try and find some fonts that work and basically type it out here. There's a really good, I showed you, what's her name? Abby Connick before. She's a very good logo designer. And this is her process as well. And it's what a lot of other designers do, where they'll actually write the word out and then they'll duplicate it and see what font works best. So they'll be like, okay, what fonts? I'm just going to use the fonts that I have for now. So like, okay, you have that one. Then it's like, okay, how do I feel about that one? So just trying to see what kind of feels nice with your font. And making note of it. Obviously I will not use that one. Let's just change that because it's actually really annoying me. And then maybe choose a couple more. Interesting. Okay, whatever. And then let's try and find another one that isn't obnoxious. Cool. All right, so I'm gonna just use that one. So over here, you can see like, okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different kinds of fonts. And then you can do different variations of that font. You can be like, okay, what does it look like when it's all caps, for example? So it can be like all caps. Okay, what does it look like when it's sentence case? I mean, not sentence, initial. You see that small caps? That's what it's called. Okay, for example. So you're trying to see which for your logo, because it's very font centric, I would go and find some interesting fonts that you can use. And if I was taking this one, that was quite simple. So if I wanted to make that one, I'll use the Start tool and be like, oh, I like this one. Okay. And I'll turn this around. And you see what I mean? So that could be like one version. This is very like obnoxious version, but like, if you see what I mean, I could change the edge of it to make it rougher. For example, like that. Okay, that's one version. Okay, what can I do to make it a little different? And then you'll be like, okay, maybe if I add multiple ones, what does that look like? Again, we don't want it to look radioactive, but you could be like, okay, what does it look like with multiple things? So you're just trying to get different ideas out as much as possible. So the same kind of process that you used for in your sketchbook, because you've narrowed it down to your favorite ones there, you're basically just getting them on screen and then choosing your favorite one and narrowing it down. And by the time you're done, what you're going to need to do is choose, okay, your favorite ones, just the same way I did here. So I had this one, I had this one, and I had this one. So you're just experimenting in black and white, always in black and white. Don't worry about color yet. And just get all the ideas onto the screen and basically choose your top 3 again.
Okay, so with the ones that I chose, I'm doing that process for each one that I chose.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're seeing how it's going to look like when you put it onto Adobe Illustrator.
Okay. Okay.
You know, and like I said, choose some fonts. Where do you normally find your fonts?
So I either use Adobe Font, or I use this website called The Font. It's DA Font.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, usually like those two.
Cool. When you search on the font, just make sure it's 100% commercial.
Okay.
So what I'm going to show you here, I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by this, because you don't want the issue when it comes to finding a font and then your client ends up getting sued and then you end up getting sued. And we don't want that. We do not want that. I generally don't use the font because of this issue. But sometimes, very rarely, I'll go onto it for a very specific type of font. So if you're looking for a font and you're like, okay, what kind of font do we want? Sans serif, script, dingback, blah, I'll just do sans serif. Okay. Where it says more options here, if you click on that, you can see you click 100% free and submit. And now these are all 100% free. Whereas if I unclick that, you see that the results are actually different. So just make sure it's 100% free if you're going to go on the font, so that you don't get in trouble.
Okay.
For this
Okay.
for this project, it doesn't really matter because it's not a real client. But when you're dealing with real clients, just make sure that it's 100% free. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And of course, Adobe Fonts is always a great place. There's also Google Fonts as well, which is good. And the reason why I like Google Fonts and Adobe Fonts is because if you're going to build a website, Google Fonts, you can just copy and paste the code and it's going to put the font on the website. Whereas with the fonts, a lot of the fonts aren't, they're not web fonts. So you have to find something alternative to use on the website. So Google Fonts is also a great place to do it. For the sake of this project, just do whatever works. But I'll just keep those kind of things in mind. Of course, I'll send you some stuff. I think there's some specific, any Abiconic thing. I think I've sent you Abiconic before, but any Abiconic video where she shows the process, it will give you a lot of insight. And I'm not going to give you too much to think about, because there's a certain way you present the work. But you don't have to do this at this stage, but if you have time, you can do it. So when you're presenting a logo to a client, it's not enough to show them just the logo on its own, because they can't put it into context, and they can't imagine the logo in real life. So what I do before when I present a logo to a client, this is what I do. So I'll make them a document, and this document will show my way of thinking. If we go through this, now you can see that I tend to show them my inspiration behind everything. So I'm like, okay, these are the kind of things that I came up with for the sake of for the project. And it shows like the images, my inspirations, shapes, what the client likes, all this kind of stuff. So remember when we did the kind of research as to like, what these things, what the particular customer would be interested in. This is where it would go in that kind of document. And then you'll be talking through the client saying, this was my thinking. And then you'll be like, okay, these are the messages that I'm trying to tell. This is the story I'm trying to tell, what these shapes mean. So I wouldn't know these kind of things if I hadn't talked about the values of the clients before the project started, at the beginning of the project anyway. So the square talking about strength, and the pyramid, Egyptian, all that kind of stuff. This is what matters to the client. And then I'll go into the concepts. So I'll show them this one. Then I'll show them do some mockups. Are you familiar with doing mockups before? Yep.
Yeah.
It's cool. Cool. You can get free ones. You can get ones that aren't free. The ones that you have to pay for are probably better. But if you go on Behance, they have a bunch of free mockups, and Graphic Burger as well. It's a good place to search for mockups. But you just show these things in context, because now the client can be like, oh, okay, this is what it's going to look like on business cards. This is going to look like on a mug. This is what it's going to look like in the office. And the next concept, what does that look like? The exact same mockups. And the next concept, what does that look like? And then put them all together in the last slide so they can all see them side by side, because sometimes they're like, oh, why don't you go back to this page while you're talking about it? And it's really annoying. So you would actually put a slide with all of the concepts together there. And then it serves as a talking point. And then what would happen is that you tell them to choose one. And this is why I only show basically top 3 logo variations, is because clients tend to say, oh, why don't you take the font from this and then the image from this? And it's just like, that's not how this is going to work. And they get very confused. So in order for you to help things along, you have to choose one. And it's like, which logo is in the right direction? And that's what you want from them. And then based on the one that you choose, that's the one you start refining. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I have a quick question.
Go on.
The way you did the concepts, like I see you have the text here, the icon here, then at the bottom the icon, then the text. Was that on purpose, or that's how you wanted it? Okay.
So basically, whenever I do a logo, I do a vertical version and a horizontal version, because logos have to be contextual, and they have to be responsive. So if you don't have the space they have to adapt. So sometimes if it's going to be on like a long strip of paper or pencil or something like that, what's it going to look like? But if it's going to be on a really tall banner, what's it going to look like? So these logos have to be responsive in order to be applied to different kinds of scenarios. So that's why I always do like a vertical and a horizontal version generally. And I make that kind of clear when I speak to the client about it. I say these are the same logo, it's just 2 variations of the same logo. But if you feel like they're going to get too confused, you don't have to show vertical and horizontal at this stage, really. So for now, what I would do, I'll focus on just the general logo. You might not even get to this stage, but like, don't worry too much about this stage. But if you do feel like you have more time, I would encourage you to do this, because they also give you more more context as to what it's going to look like as well. But that's what I would do. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool stuff. Yeah. Do you have any questions about that?
No. So just to confirm, for next week, I'm just computer logos basically with my top 3.
Yeah.
And then playing around with that 4th one as well. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Amazing. Cool stuff. I can't wait to see what you come up with. Like, this is where it gets really fun. Yeah. The fact that you're smiling is making me really smile. So I'm very happy about that. Amazing. Cool. So that's your homework. Your homework is to digitalize your concepts, play around with it, have some fun with it. If you need any help going through like making patterns and stuff like that, I can show
Yeah.
you. We can jump on a call. I can show you that, or I can send you some stuff.
Okay, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, definitely. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem at all. Cool stuff. If you like this clip, make sure you like, hit the bell, and subscribe so you see more videos like this. And if you're a Black graphic designer who wants to join a community where you can learn new skills and network with other people, hit the link in the description to join the Black Design Circle, and I'll see you there. Peace.